Let's go.
What's up? Welcome to the Beyond Jiu Jitsu podcast. I really hope this isn't your first episode because these intros are getting wilder by the day.
Well, they just got to mix
16.
it up, bro. Just got to mix it up. The last few have just been the same. Welcome to the Beyond Jiu Jitsu podcast. Got to mix it up.
We have to surprise our audience.
Yeah.
Boogity boogity boo.
Too much coffee.
Oh, shit.
Episode 16.
16.
We're going to talk about training partners, different training partners, how to choose your training partners in the gym. Last episode, though, we spoke a bit about Kieren's background, coming from the Navy, videography, bodybuilding, into jiu-jitsu.
Bit of everything.
A bit of everything. I mean, it was probably our least jiu-jitsu specific episode, but I actually could have had the episode go for hours. It was just our standard time of about an hour, but I personally could have just sat here talking to Kieren about a lot of random interesting subjects, and it could have gone on for far longer, but I still had a fun chat. So go back and listen to that if you want to know a bit more about Kieren's story. But today, strictly jiu-jitsu.
Into the jiu-jitsu, beyond jiu-jitsu. Let's go.
So training partners, right? Some of them suck.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, even
straight up.
Even for me, I remember there were people who I would kind of actively avoid, people who I would always want to pair up with, people who, when Fabio put me in the group with so-and-so, I was like, oh, man, shit.
Yeah.
Have you already experienced that?
100%. 100%. And
You gonna name names?
Oh, I may name drop. Man, I don't give a fuck. So one thing I want to bring up just off the jump, so months ago, I'm talking like 4 months ago or so, I made a YouTube video just spitballing, white belt's perspective to white belt about selecting training partners. And I got roasted in the comments saying,
did you do a video about selecting partners?
Yeah. How to choose. Yeah, you did.
I actually haven't seen it. It must be the only video.
That's fine. That's fine. Yeah, don't worry.
Kieren just starts turning my mic down.
Welcome to the Kieren LaFair podcast.
No, that must be like one of the only ones I haven't seen.
Yes,
Not only have I seen all the other ones, but I've featured in multiple of your YouTube
Yeah,
videos.
you have. You're becoming a reoccurring segment.
Yeah.
But I did do a video on this, and a lot of the comments were absolutely roasting me in terms of like, as a lower belt, as a white belt, you don't get to choose your training partners.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. We've spoken about this before, but it's like in the video, I basically mentioned that I try to roll with someone that is at what I consider like similar weight and a white belt as well, similar weight and similar experience as me, to clash up against someone that I find is as similar, that is at the session, right? That is at the training session. Yeah. So I can get that, peer-to-peer rolling experience. And then I try to go with at least once per session a higher belt so I can, get smashed and figure it and really highlight to me where the holes are in my game and in my jiu-jitsu. And I got hammered in the comments saying, shut up, white belt. You don't choose your training partners. You fucking do what you're told.
Yeah, it's a bit of an old school etiquette that still exists. When it comes to jiu-jitsu etiquette, I think I personally often sit right in the middle because I came up through that time where all these etiquette rules were still heavily enforced, but also now they're kind of fading away. So yeah, the one you're referring to, which is that lower belts are not permitted to ask a higher belt to roll.
Yeah.
It's funny because I don't, as you know, I don't enforce that in the gym at all. I don't follow that rule. But at the same time, I kind of respect that rule. Like, like in the sense, for example, I mean, I've never said this to my students, but if a lower belt, I let any of my students ask me to roll. I think it's ridiculous that they can't, right? So any student, white belt or whoever, can ask me to roll. But if I already have my partner, I kind of by default expect them to respect my decision that I've already got a partner.
Yeah.
So same as if you asked a blue belt to roll and they don't have a partner and they say, yes, cool. But if that blue belt says, no, I'm going with so-and-so, it's kind of like, well, the blue belt gets to choose whether they roll with you or not. But you should be allowed to ask them.
Yeah. I follow that rule and I don't. Now,
You mean follow it or agree with it?
No, follow it. As in, actually, I do not ask higher belt to roll, and I do. I ask up to purple belt to roll, and I don't ask brown or black belt to roll.
Why'd you put the line there? Because you feel like you can take the purple belts.
Yeah, 100%. I can smash every purple belt in a gym, hands down, super easy, especially Ollie.
Don't worry, Ollie's
Come at
not
me.
listening.
I just put the biggest target on my back. I'm so sorry, Ollie, but you suck. Nah.
Ollie has been doing zero
fantastic.
exercise during lockdown.
Good.
So it
It's gonna be
doesn't matter,
soft
bro.
and
If he listens to this episode,
It's gonna be
like
squishy.
right before the gym opens, he's gonna be squishy.
He's gonna fucking kill me. No, but I don't know. I just drew the line there. I think, and realistically, I don't actively ask purple belts to roll. Only if we're the last. Obviously, the last two, then I acknowledge that I'm partnering up. So basically, what I'm saying is I pretty much only ask blue belts. I don't ask any higher belt to roll. But one thing I always adhere to is when a higher belt asks me to roll. Say even if I already have a partner, if it's a white belt, no matter if I'm partnered up with a white belt that I really wanted to roll with or whatever, and even if a purple belt or brown belt or black belt asks me to roll, I'll definitely go with them. I'll be like, oh, sorry, man, I'm going. I've been called out by especially if it's you.
The etiquette goes the other way,
man,
right?
like I've seen it, and I mean,
and it's funny, like I said, I'm kind of in the middle, right?
But
like,
I don't know, man. I've seen blue belts at our gym, like they've been partnered up with white belts or even white belts. I can't remember exactly what belt. They're either white or blue belt. They're partnered up with someone, and like a brown belt has asked them to roll or whatever. And oh, sorry, I'm with old mate white belt. I'm like, oh, yeah. I watched that. I'm like, you did not just do that.
It's funny because again, it's like a little unspoken etiquette thing.
Yeah,
and I feel like I couldn't be more on the fence. Again, because I came up through this etiquette, but also it's just fading away.
Yeah.
Like I agree and don't agree. I'm so split down the middle because part of me is, feels like that higher belt. It's like, well, man, bad luck. He already has a partner. Move on. But then also, I think, it's happened in my gym as well because I don't necessarily enforce these etiquette rules and they're never really taught to you. Like you learn them just through experience, right? There's been times where I've asked whoever to roll, and perhaps I'm in a particular mood, right? Sometimes I'll get in a mood where it's less the student's class and more my training session.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that that's a sign of a bad instructor, by the way, but sometimes if I'm preparing for a competition or something, my students know that I'm training with them as well, right? I still teach them and everything, but when it comes down to the rolling rounds, I'm switching on my competition brain, right? Yep. And when you're a competitor, you have to be a little bit selfish. So there's been times where I've said like so-and-so like, oh, let's go. And they've gone, no, I'm with, I've said to a blue belt, let's roll. And they've said, no, I'm with so-and-so. And then I've actually said to them, no, you're going with me. And they're like, but I've got, no, you're going with me, right? And I mean, I've had that happen to me when I was a lower belt, right? You're never taught these things. Well, you're taught through, it's like trial by fire, right?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I mean, I've seen that in passing. And like you said, you don't enforce any rules. You haven't which is, I agree with in a respect, but from a lower belt perspective, being new to this sport, and maybe this is my military training because there's very, very distinct hierarchy. Just a quick aside, there's been a couple times at the gym where you haven't yelled at anyone, but you've sort of, maybe as a collective, the class was being a bit lazy that day and where the competition's coming up and you've kind of not given everyone a dressing down, but sort of, given after everyone's lined up after class, you're like, all right, guys, come on, we need a bit more energy here. Rah, rah, rah. I've actually defaulted into standing at ease, standing at fucking in a military stance, and then being like, yeah, oh yes sir, just automatically taking the bone in, and
I haven't noticed.
Oh man, I do it under my breath, and I realize I'm doing it. I feel like a fucking idiot because the people's next to me what the fuck is he doing? I'm like, oh, yes sir, just quietly fuck. It's just ingrained in you. But like I was saying, I think that from my military experience, and there's a very clear rank structure, a very clear hierarchy. Yep. And it's the same as if a lieutenant commander in the Navy, which is one rank higher than me, because I was a lieutenant, if they told me to do something, but I had a lieutenant that told me to do something else, I'm going to fuck, or you know what I mean? If a commander tells me to do something, a lieutenant commander tells me to do one
everything
thing,
and do what that
I do what the higher rank says. The only exception, very nuanced, is if they're not in my chain of command, whatever.
Or someone's about to die, or I'm sure there's some exceptions. But
there are exceptions. But it's very clear to me. I'm very used to giving way to not the person, but the rank. And in jiu-jitsu, okay, you may have a purple belt. If you're a white belt, you may see a purple belt and they're a dickhead, right? Maybe they're a fuckhead, but they're a purple belt. So in my experience and in my training in the defense force, I have been conditioned to respect the rank that they're wearing, not necessarily, even if I don't respect the individual person. It's what they represent. It's their experience, their skill, and that's what I have been trained to. So just naturally, I brought that into jiu-jitsu, which it has a very clear, visible rank structure, just like the Navy, and I give way and give credence to higher belts because I respect their experience and what they are wearing, not necessarily the individual.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just something that I'm personally really bad at enforcing. I mean, I'm very generally, I'm very laid back, you know, I'm, you know, really open. None of my students have to call me sir or anything. They just call me by my first name.
Professor is one as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, professor's just the word for, it's like the one word in Portuguese for
teacher,
essentially for teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, so if you're just a generic English teacher in Portuguese, you'd be a professor of English, right? Or an English professor. Whereas in the language English, we think of professor like someone who's got a PhD or in something, right?
Yeah. I saw this thing on Reddit today, which is relevant to this. It was basically someone saying that you can not go to high school or whatever, just do jiu-jitsu and then you become a professor. Like eventually it's a way to become it was so dumb. It was the fucking dumbest comment, but it's relevant. It's funny.
But yeah, I think because I'm so laid back, I don't often enforce these etiquette rules, and maybe the process of my students learning these etiquette rules is a bit slower than other gyms. Like we had Ian, you remember Ian, who was a white belt of ours who's recently moved to the other side of the country.
To Perth, right?
To Perth. He works like in the mining industry and things like that. On his way, he was visiting random gyms, and they were that very sort of like strict lineup, bow to the photo of the master on the wall and no talking to higher belts and all this sort of stuff. So he was kind of like, whoa, man, really made me realize how laid back my gym is. And don't take me wrong, I don't mean laid back as in we're not good at jiu-jitsu, you know, but I just mean you don't have to be a prick to teach good jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? But because of that, when you said that sometimes at the end of class people will be lined up and I'm essentially, you know, giving people a reaming and you'll stand there going, yes sir, yes sir. I think it's because I am so laid back. I find my line in the sand pushed so, like, let's imagine 0 is you being a complete prick and, you know, not taking anything, and 100 is you letting people walk all over you, right? Let's say, for argument's sake, most people's line in the sand is at 50, right in the middle. For me, I feel like I'm so laid back that my line is somewhere like at 80 or 90, so far back that I don't expect anyone, because society, no one really ever passes 50, right? The person with common sense or whatever, no one really passes that that line, that invisible line in society. So when my line is pushed so far back that when people start to encroach on it, like I lose my shit, you know, not as in I go into a blind rage, but, you know, I feel like
you let it known. Yeah.
Yeah. So when someone gets close to it, you know, because I kind of haven't pulled them up earlier when they got to like 48, 49, 50, I didn't say anything then, you know, but when they start getting close to my line up to 80, that's when you'll see at the end of the class or something, I line people up being like, this isn't effing good enough, like blah, blah, blah. Well, I try not to swear in my, in my classes, but you know, and sometimes it's needed, right? Especially if you're preparing for competition training. And sometimes people need to be like, man, it's a full contact combat sport. I say that all the time, you know, like we can train and be all friendly and everything, but sometimes people need a little bit of a slap around the face, bro. Like, let's go.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what people are joining for. They're signing up for that. It's not like joining a gym where, you know, you pay your membership, you go lift weights and you go home. Like if you went to a gym like that and one of the PTs pulled you up and said, oh, fuck, you know, gave you a reaming for not working hard enough or whatever for that gym session, you tell them to get fucked, it would be ridiculous. But jiu-jitsu's not like that. And I don't want to be cliche, but jiu-jitsu's a lifestyle, but it sort of is in a way. Like,
yeah, and it is also, the way I always explain it to people who don't train is like jiu-jitsu's, different jiu-jitsu gyms are like different universities. And if you want to come train with me, like you're choosing to train with me, right? So that means you're choosing to adhere to my standards and what I require from you. And if you don't like it, like I'm not the sort of person who says, if you don't like it, you can leave. But I mean, it's my standards, it's my reputation. If you don't like it, you know, or if you don't feel you can meet those or you disagree with them, then go find a gym where, you know, you don't need to know how to do X, Y, Z to get your blue belt or whatever.
Yeah,
the same way if you didn't like the way they taught, you know, law at Oxford University, well then go to Blacktown TAFE. I don't know, like go somewhere else, right?
Just to be clear, in this analogy, Alliance Sydney is Oxford and all Gracie gyms are TAFE.
Hey, I didn't say that, bro. You said it. But anyway, going back to choosing your training partners and everything, let's ignore the etiquette side, right? Because that is going to vary from gym to gym. In terms of how do you have a good training partner, who do you pick to train with? Sometimes it's not up to you, right? Sometimes you get partnered with whoever, or sometimes you're late to class, and or sometimes there's uneven numbers, you know, so you just end up with whoever. But firstly, let's talk about drilling, okay? In my opinion, it's as a higher belt, you need to be drilling with, depends on the individual, right? Some blue belts are incredibly talented, but as a black belt, I kind of don't really want to drill with Kieren's getting a smirk on his face because I've drilled with Kieren plenty of times. but don't take this the wrong way, Kieren. But I personally, I kind of don't want to drill with like lower than a purple belt. Reason being is just because there's just an experience gap, right? They don't move the way that you want them to move or expect them to move because they just haven't got the experience and the knowledge yet that when you're doing more complicated techniques where you would initiate a particular movement and you would expect your opponent, who in this scenario is a black belt as well, because I only fight other black belts, that black belt would know, you know, have whatever knowledge. So he would move in a certain way that would then allow me to do whatever is the technique I'm doing. A perfect example is if you find someone who's relatively inexperienced at jiu-jitsu and you try to drill reverse De La Riva with them, they don't even understand it. The person on the top, right, can't even like engage properly into your reverse De La Riva. Reverse De La Riva is a guard where you need the person on top to engage into the guard. It's not a guard like close guard where you can kind of just have it against the person on top, against their will. Reverse De La Riva, the person on top kind of needs to engage in it. For those who are a little lost here, they kind of need to sit down into a Cossack squat-ish position. So as a higher belt, if I'm drilling with a lower belt that doesn't like move the right way, it just makes the whole thing really hard. Obviously, I can drill with lower belts. I'm an instructor, so I know how to. But if I'm talking about me personally as someone who's wanting to drill and develop, and sometimes a lot of the drilling I do is troubleshooting and stuff like that, I need someone who's on a similar experience level, right? When you're a lower belt, it kind of doesn't really matter, right? If you're a white belt, you can drill with anyone, right? Avoid the white belts though, that like the last thing you want to see when you look over and you see white belts teaching white belts and you're like, oh man. You know? I mean, that's quite a blanket statement because sometimes the white belt is legitimately helping with good knowledge, but it's a stereotype because often the advice that the white belt's giving the white belt
is terrible.
You know, and sometimes I'll look over and I'll be like, no, don't, you're going to break his finger. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Right. You know, so that's the stereotype. Obviously, some white belts are more knowledgeable than others or more clued in. I'll tell you a funny one is got this student, Ross. He's a really good blue belt now, right? But his girlfriend joined, Elsa, And at the time, Ross was still a white belt. So he was like a 4-stripe white belt, and Elsa had just joined. And Elsa was instantly a natural. And it was so sad when she left. She had to move back to France. Elsa's a doctor. She had to go back to France to continue her studies and whatnot. But it was so funny, man, when she joined, and like within 2 weeks she'd be correcting Ross's technique when they were drilling, but she would be right. It wasn't like she was just kind of being one of those white belts where you're like, oh my God, you know, and she was incredibly talented from day one. So you do get white belts like that, but the stereotype is often terrible advice, and it's wrong, and wrong to the point that someone will get hurt.
Look, I'm just going to go out on record and say, if you're a white belt like me, and this is what I do, I don't give advice to anyone.
Yeah, I mean,
I just don't. Even if I identify what they're doing is wrong, I don't give them advice. Unless they're like day one, day one white belt, and we're learning something that I've learned like 3 times or something like that.
Yeah, like a hip escape or something.
I'd give them a pointer, right?
Or you look over and they do a forward roll and they almost broke their neck, and you're like,
safety-wise, yeah.
But
100%.
I mean,
but I do not, if I'm drilling a technique and it's a white belt, the similar experience, unless I, within reason, I do not give advice. And one thing I certainly don't do is give advice during or immediately after a roll. I will tell someone.
Oh my God, I hate that.
I will tell someone how a submission felt or something like that. If they ask, like, oh, was I close there? No, I don't know. You weren't close because I felt like I had a lot of space on my left side of my neck or whatever. I'll just tell them how I experienced their submission attempt or whatever. But I will fucking never be like, oh yeah, you need to do this and this and that.
Oh, it's the worst. It's so cringe.
It is
pet peeve. So many people do it.
Cringe.
I mean, if you're at a good gym though, you shouldn't need to have a white belt correcting a white belt. Like, what the hell's the instructor doing?
Yeah,
I mean, of course, he might be helping another pair, but.
And it's not even that they intend ill or anything like that. But it happens everywhere, and I'm not naming any names because they'll probably listen to this. I've had white belts with more experience, or even some with less experience. It's funny when you get someone that's been training for like a couple of weeks, and they start giving you advice. It's, obviously they mean well, but you're like, mate, shut up.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
but it's just one of those things that you.
I hate having to shut it down because sometimes I'll overhear a white belt give the wrong advice. And of course, if it's something that would get someone injured, I'll always be like, no, don't do that, blah blah blah. But sometimes,
you don't want to call them out.
Sometimes I'll overhear a higher belt, like a purple belt or something, correct or give advice to a lower belt or something, and it's wrong, and I'll kind of be like. Like, do I call them out in front of this white belt? Do I make them lose face? Because sometimes it's
you don't want to do that.
A small detail, but sometimes it's like super wrong. I mean, look, I'll usually correct them because that's my job. But
no, I get what you're saying, but I think, and this comes from me being a PT. When I was a PT, I went through a very, very short phase, very, very short, like a matter of like a couple of times where I would give my friends unsolicited advice in the gym and correct their form on techniques for a squat or whatever. And then I realized very, very quickly, I think I literally only did it like once or twice, but I made a rule to myself, like a rigid rule that I still adhere to this day. I will never give anyone advice in a gym ever, period. I won't go up to anyone, no matter who they are, and correct their form or give them pointers, anything like that. Only if I'm explicitly and directly asked, whether I'm like best friends with them or don't even know, whatever. I just do not.
And if they're doing something where they're going to get injured, the correct thing to do is pull out your phone, film it, and send it to what's the fails of the week.
Exactly. Right? Exactly. No, seriously, I've seen situations where I'm looking over and I'm like, fuck. If you keep doing that, you're probably going to get injured, and like say maybe morally questionable, but I still won't intervene. Yep. Like if it's that bad, I'll go get one of the gym owners that works there or whatever. But I just blanket rule will never ever ever correct form, and I carry that exact mentality to jiu-jitsu 100%. Yeah, 100%.
So when it comes to drilling, for higher belts, I think you want to look to pick a partner who's going to behave in the way you need them to behave for the techniques that you're doing, right? And, you know, like I said, for me, I'm kind of looking for purple belts and up to be able to, Kieran's smirking again, to be able to interact. I mean, it depends what you're drilling,
I'm feeling
right?
bad now.
Yeah.
I'm feeling bad.
Like if I'm drilling, if I'm drilling a half guard sweep, I mean, it's, you know, of course it can be with anyone, but you know, once you start to do more complicated techniques, you need them to do that next layer of complexity, that back and forth action reaction for you to make your technique applicable, right? Moving on from drilling partners, rolling partners, right? Ignoring etiquette. Again, let's imagine you can ask anyone to roll without getting yelled at. Are there people you avoid rolling with? You don't have to name names, but are there people? No, you haven't experienced yet people that you actively avoid rolling with?
So I have gone through the periods like that. But
what would be a reason for avoiding to roll with someone?
So if someone is doing a technique, and this happened, I'm not going to name any names. This happened months and months and months ago. Honestly, I still remember who it was, but I'm not going to name any names, and they'll never figure it out. So there was someone that I was rolling with very early days of joining. Like it was my first 3 months. It was like 2-strap or something like that. There was someone I was going up against that was doing a particular technique on me that I just did not like. They were doing a particular thing that I found very uncomfortable.
Was it a legal technique though?
So at the time, I thought it might not have been, and I actually, funnily enough, it was legal. It was just uncomfortable for me. So it was my issue. I just didn't like it. It would frustrate me because I didn't know how to respond to it. It'd be very uncomfortable, but not enough for me to tap. And even back then, I realized that I wasn't going to tap from something that wasn't a submission because I was stubborn and I got a big ego. But what I ended up doing, and I know there's lots of advice against this, like I'm trying to learn how to counter a specific person's specific technique, but I went and got a couple private lessons with Jeremy Skinner to learn how to counter this particular technique. And then I would actively seek that person so I could smash it on them. And it worked. And I haven't had an issue with that ever since. But one thing that experience taught me was that if I ever feel like avoiding a roll with someone, I'll ask them to roll as soon as I can. That would be the first person I'd beeline to ask to roll, because that's that little bitch in the back of my mind that's telling me that I'm scared of that person or scared of whatever, or I don't necessarily want to deal with it, so I'll beeline it to him. And prime example, we've mentioned him a couple of times, is Eric. And if Eric's listening and he wonders why he's the first person I normally ask to roll, that's why, bro, because I'm a little bit scared. So I beeline it to Eric and I
say
ask
this
Eric
every
to roll.
time. I'm a black belt and I don't want to roll with Eric.
He's so good.
He's just so much work, belt color aside. But then when you're reminded that he's a white belt and you're like, oh my God, why? You know what?
He's going to be a killer, man.
Yeah.
He's going to be a fucking killer.
He's a hard work.
I beeline it to Eric and I go, go hard. And I roll against Eric. Or
what do you think? So I agree with you. You should never avoid rolling with someone because you're a little bitch, right?
Yeah. Just essentially, yeah.
Just jump in there. What would you think is a valid reason to avoid rolling with someone?
For me, a valid reason to avoid, in my position, someone, my age, my experience, my athleticism, this is going to sound a bit like a prick. I don't necessarily like rolling with people that are a lot lighter than me. Say it like in a nice way. Like I don't necessarily enjoy rolling with someone. Like I'm about 80, 85 now because I've been bulking,
getting huge.
A legit bulk, not a fat bulk. I'm about 80, 84, 85 kilos now. If I'm rolling with someone that's 40 kilos, the separation between us is so great that I can't, I feel bad if I just put the smash on and try out new techniques or whatever, because I'm literally just going to crush them,
Yeah.
But I mean, not to say I don't like it, but I mean, yeah, man, I'm just gonna be honest. Like sometimes I don't actively avoid it. Like if they ask me to roll, I never say no. I never say no to a roll.
But you don't call them out.
I never call them out for a roll unless it's like, there's only a few people left and we sort of picking partners. I don't want to be, I got to get a partner before the buzzer.
It's funny though, but I don't think you haven't yet experienced like a 40 kilo or 50 kilo blue, purple, brown, black belt yet.
That's a weapon?
Who can smash you?
No, never. I'm going to go on record, and this is a bit of a call out, that I'm yet to be smashed by a, you know, the stereotypical like 40 kilo purple belt chick that's just a weapon. Never experienced that. I've never been smashed by someone that, and not even like gender aside, I've never been smashed by someone that's like the gulf between our weight and strength is that great. It's I've never experienced that. Yeah, I mean, I've rolled against very tough opponents that are a lot lighter than me, but I've never felt like, holy fuck, I just got my ass handed to me. No offense to any of them. No offense, but come at me. Come at me. That's all I'm saying. Like, bring it.
Well, I'll tell you a reason that I think is valid to avoid certain training partners is if you're unfortunate enough to have a training partner who is notorious for injuring people and doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
I
haven't experienced that.
Yeah, we don't really have anyone like that in the gym. We have no one who trains with us who has that sort of mentality.
I don't know. Joey injured me.
Yeah. But I injured Joey for you.
Good. So Joey's a brown belt.
Yeah.
Very
blew
good.
out his ACL. Suck it. But I had that in Brazil, right? There were people who I would avoid because they would try to hurt me on purpose. And then that sucked when I was paired with them against my wishes, because then it really felt like a competition role, as in competition role.
Protecting yourself at all times, yeah.
Yeah. You know, this person would be trying to hurt me, and that's not fun, you know. If it's in a competition, I don't really care, because
that's what you signed
that's what I've signed up for. But in the gym,
that's shit.
I want to come back tomorrow or later today and train.
That reminds me, I've had someone tell me that I hurt them last time we rolled together. And I think not that they may not have been actively avoiding me, but maybe they were. I've had someone say, hey, last time we rolled, you hurt my ribs because your top pressure was too much or something. I can't remember the specific circumstance. And I was really taken aback by that. And I was like, holy shit, okay. Like I felt really, really bad about that, because our weight difference, again, back to the whole weight thing, our weight difference was so much.
Yeah.
And because, you know.
Well, yeah, if it's something like that, you got to be careful, right? If you're just much heavier.
Yeah.
You know, I'm someone who's about 100 kilos. So if I'm rolling with someone who's 50 kilos or even 60 kilos, like, it's a massive difference.
Yeah.
So I have to be careful not to hurt them just with the fact that I'm heavy. But sometimes, you know, as a lower belt, you're not going to know, but sometimes that person saying you hurt me, you know, the reply should be, well, welcome to Jiu Jitsu. Welcome
to the jungle, bitch.
Yeah, you know, because you don't know, you know, for example, if someone said that to me last time we rolled, or when this happened, you hurt me, you know, I know enough about Jiu Jitsu to know whether I was doing something wrong, against the rules, morally wrong, right? Which the answer is always no, because I don't do those things, right? But when you're a lower belt, you might not know that. If as a white belt and a fellow white belt says to you, oh, when you did this, you hurt me, you may not have enough jiu-jitsu experience to turn and say to them, bro, but yeah, like that's jiu-jitsu, you know, the same way that in boxing, if I punch you in the face and you turn to me and say, that hurt when you punched me in the face, you'd be like, yeah, no shit, right? Whereas, you know, they might turn to you and say, when you did this, it hurt me. And, you know, you might not know that you were doing something that is frowned upon, or maybe something that's just straight up against the rules.
Yeah.
Some people are a little less aware of how rough jiu-jitsu can be. You know, it's got the name as the gentle art. It's really, you know, that's just a marketing play. It's really not. I don't know who says that. It's really not gentle at all. You know, I mean, it's gentle in the sense that it's not striking. You're not getting punched and kicked in the head. But if I'm rolling with an opponent, I'm going to do 200% of what I'm allowed to do within the rules to make your life uncomfortable. And I don't want to hurt you as in have you
permanently
go
damaged,
home and be injured, or even temporarily injured. I don't want you injured, but like there's injury and hurt are not synonymous, right?
Yeah.
I can hurt you and you be fine. So if I can inflict maximum amount of discomfort and pain and hurt, you know, without injury, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
Right. It's a combat sport. And some people, you know, regardless of how long they train, don't
They can't
really
accept
get that.
They don't want to accept it.
It's all with context though, right? If you've arrived into the beginner's welcome to Jiu Jitsu 101 class and someone's rolling with you or treating you that way, I would say that's their bad, right? You know, it's not the time or place. But if you've rocked up into competition training or an advanced class, you know, well, it's Jiu Jitsu, bro. You know,
100%.
The same way, yeah. I mean, it's so clear to give striking examples. You don't walk into an advanced striking class and then complain because someone punched you or kicked you in the head. Like, man,
Yeah.
what did you expect?
I think I understand where some people are coming from. Like if they don't want to get like scratches or bruises on their face and maybe they're an actor or something.
Yeah,
but it's that's the risk they know they're taking when they do jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And it's their responsibility to protect their face or whatever.
That's right.
Or tap.
That's right. Or if you're in a gym that allows you to be a human and not one of these, you know, military style gyms, just turn and say to your partner, to each partner before the roll, oh, just be careful of this or whatever. I don't mean, hey, just be careful of me because I'm a baby, you know, but I mean, you could turn to someone and say, man, I've got a massive, like I'm in court, maybe you're a lawyer, you're like, man, I'm in court tomorrow. Like, let's roll, but just watch my face, you know, or something. Okay, if you're rocking up to the competition class, maybe you probably shouldn't go to that class if you're in that situation.
100%.
But, you know, if you're just in a generic class, the same way you might say, hey, man, let's roll, but just if you go on a foot lock or whatever, this foot's a bit sore, I'll tap quick.
It's the same when you go to a different gym. Say you're rolling with someone you've never rolled before. My experience doing that, because I've done it once now, and just about every single person that I roll with, first thing they said to me is, do you have any injuries I need to be aware of? Like that was default, every single person. And it's the same. Like if you're rolling with the same people every day, you don't do that because you should know their injuries, you know the individual. But yeah, if you're nursing an injury, like when I injured my ankle, everyone would always ask me like, okay, which ankle is it? Like, so they're aware, is it okay? And all that. So yeah, that's just being a decent human. But I get what you're saying in terms of operating within the rules. You're going to do everything you can to make that person feel very uncomfortable to get the position that you want, because it's fucking jiu-jitsu. It's not cuddling. Yeah.
Well, there's some cuddling. I look over and Dan and Jake are just spooning. They're not even rolling anymore. But when you choose your partner, I always, and I have always done, and I still do this, I have specific goals for specific partners. And I think that's important because you don't, you know, it's kind of like coming into if you're weightlifting, you have different goals for different weights or movements. You know, you've got a particular goal for your deadlift, a particular goal for your squat or your bench or whatever exercises you're doing. I'll have specific goals against specific people because I want to make it harder for me. Like if I'm rolling with a white belt, I don't just say to myself, oh, if I tap them, I win. No, like I set myself specific goals. I'll go, you know, sometimes it's something as simple. My goals may be defined by the belt. So sometimes when I roll, I'll do something like if I'm rolling with a black belt, I need 1 submission to win. I need 2 against a brown, 3 against a purple, 4 against a blue, and 5 against a white in the whatever minute round it is for me to tell myself that I've won. So sometimes my goals might be belt specific, but usually they're partner specific because you train with the same people every day. So with someone like Ollie, right? Ollie's a purple belt working on really good top passing, over, under, stack passes, things like that. So I'll have a goal with Ollie where I'll do something like, okay, I'm not even going to let him get to the over under, and I'm going to make sure before he gets there, I enter in whatever position it is that I'm doing. Or I'll be rolling with Joey, brown belt, really good X guard. Sometimes my goal might be to not even end up in his X guard because it's really hard work. Or sometimes I might be a little more willing to fall in his X guard because then I'll work on passing his X guard. Like I always set myself goals against that specific partner because it's not a competition at the moment. It's someone I train with all the time. I know what they're good at, what they're bad at. It's not a competition role.
But by setting goals for yourself, no matter who you're rolling with, you're ensuring progression, or you're ensuring you're making things challenging.
And it's how you progress with the same partner.
Yeah.
So people that I trained with, I had this one partner in Brazil. His name was Rafa, and such a lovely dude, almost the same height as me, but skinnier. I used to fight middle heavy, 88 kilos, and Rafa would either fight 88 kilos, middle heavy, or he would fight middle, 82. So he was
similar to me then.
Yeah. So he was leaner than me, but he was almost the same height as me. So we had
not similar to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So we had a very similar style, and man, we would go, we had so many wars, and we both in a loving way would be super pissed off if the other person got the better of us. But that's how our progression would go. Through the belts, there would be, we would go through a 3-month, 4-month, 5-month period where, I could never pass his guard and he would always sweep me or submit me. And then all of a sudden that would change and I would start passing him all the time. And then we would go through a phase where I would pass him every time. And then that forced him to level up his guard again. And then the needle would swing back the other way, right? Where he would start being able to sweep me again or whatever. And that's how you progress against the same opponent all the time. So my goal with each individual opponent, it's a little different now being the head instructor, and, my hardest training partner is Joey,
being in a position where,
but being in a position where,
above you.
Yeah, I'm the top dog.
Well, you are,
so
like,
to speak, right?
The black belt.
It's a bit different. But as I was coming up, my goal was always whatever was the hardest challenge with that particular opponent.
Yeah,
that was always. So I remember this
similar.
one guy, Edson. Edson won worlds at blue belt, and he had such a good guard. I actually don't know if I think I only ever passed Edson's guard once, maybe. I can't even remember. He had such a good guard. But for years, like that, it was just permanently my goal was to pass Edson's guard. It was, and it never changed. That was just always my goal. And I think I maybe passed him once and swept him once or something in the whole time that we trained together. We didn't train together every day, but it was always what was the hardest thing. That was my goal. And sometimes I had some partners, maybe similar to you, when you and Toby roll, right? So Toby's another white belt, similar weight to Kieren. They have they're really good training partners for each other. I had some partners where it was just such a brutal war that often the goal was just to not get scored on, or, even if you won by one advantage, it would be a victory because the roles were so tough.
Yeah.
But I think you should always set goals for that individual when it's people who you train with every day. If you're visiting a gym, you don't necessarily can do that.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't, because then it's like mat storming, right?
Yeah, yeah. But I think you should do that when you're training with the same people every day. Definitely set goals for those individuals that you're rolling with.
Mm. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So I do this as well, but I will caveat, I do this because you told me to do it months ago. So yeah, I do this, and my goals are similar. Like if I am rolling against Toby, my goal would be to not concede and to see if I can score either points or a submission. If I'm rolling against someone like Eric, my number one goal is to get the submission at all costs.
Yep, that's my goal too with Eric.
If I'm rolling against a purple belt or above, my goal is to not get submitted. Just see if I can go however long without being submitted, or if it's against like yourself, not get submitted more than X amount of times, depending on how much time we have. And yeah, so I do something very similar. And obviously if I'm rolling against a white belt or a blue belt, my goal is just to submit them, not get submitted. Or if it's someone very, very close to my weight and like experience like Toby, then yeah, it would be to just get points or just win by points or advantage or what have you.
Just to win, yeah.
Yeah.
I want to say something as well that's maybe just for me and for people rolling with me. When you're a lower belt rolling with a higher belt, often, and I've been guilty of this, you kind of as the lower belt don't roll properly with them, with the higher belt, this kind of respect thing.
Yeah.
And I think I've told multiple students, lower belts, whatever belt, white, blue, purple, I say to them, I'm like, man, come at me, you know, roll with me like I'm the same belt as you, because you not rolling with me properly out of respect or whatever, what's actually kind of disrespectful, because you're kind of saying that part of me is saying that it feels like you're saying I can't handle you when you roll properly. So come at me. But also I should be able to handle that and I can deal with it. So just roll normally. You don't have to tiptoe around because you're a blue belt rolling with a black belt. I mean, if that blue belt student of mine gets the better of me, power to them. Plus, they don't know what I'm working on. I've mentioned this before, that when I roll with students, I kind of have 3 different ways that I roll with them. Sometimes, and it depends on the student and where they're at and where I'm at in evaluating them, if you will. Sometimes I just put smash on because I feel they need it or for whatever reason. Sometimes I roll a little bit more give and take, and sometimes I roll much more give. And I'll give you an example. I'll kind of make myself fall into a triangle or something because I'll want to see what that student's ability, where their skills are at in terms of finishing that triangle. Or I'll let that blue belt take my back and then I'll start defending because I'll want to see and physically feel for myself where their back control is at, right? Does it take me 2 seconds to escape, or does it take me 2 minutes to escape their back control, right? Or do I not escape and they submit me? Okay, so I'll roll differently, right? But if that student isn't rolling with me properly in the first place because they're doing that whole, there's a higher belt, so be all respectful, blah, 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 then my 3 different rolling styles in terms of an evaluation tool, like they're not being gauged properly because you're not rolling with me properly.
Yeah.
You know, so if I roll with you as a blue belt and I let you take my back, or maybe you legitimately took it, you'll never know. Maybe I'm giving this whole speech so I have this little fallback, you know, this little save face speech, right? You know, if you take my back or if I let you take my back or whatever it is, I mean, roll properly with me, right? If I'm in your triangle and you finish me, awesome. Maybe you legitimately caught me, cool. Like I'm stoked as an instructor and I'm stoked for you as a student. Or maybe I escaped and that's a sign that I'm really good at escaping triangle. No, you know, it's a sign that maybe we need to work on your skills of finishing a triangle, or we need to work on your back control or your mount control because I just escape your mount every 2 seconds, you know? So for me, if it's any of my students listening or anyone who wants to come visit the gym or future students, and you roll normally with me, right?
Yeah, unless
you're told otherwise.
Yeah, so I've realized fairly recently that I think I'm guilty of this, but it's not out of respect because I don't like you.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it's not out of respect as such for the high belt and not wanting to disrupt the status quo. It's different for me, and I'm not sure if anyone else can relate to this. But in the back of my mind, I've lost before we've begun. So sometimes
sure,
I think like, and particularly now that I've filmed a lot of my roles. And I look back on it and I think, hang on a minute, like in thinking back to the moment, it's like, okay, if say for example, I was rolling with you, it's like if you were a white belt, I would have just come up here, or I wouldn't have done that, or I would have, you know, done this instead. And I think a lot of the times, like I don't go for things because I think they won't work, or it's more like that rather than.
I've been super guilty of that.
Yeah,
I think everyone has, right? You got to try switch that off.
Oh yeah,
I can still do it sometimes when I'm not the best black belt in the world. I mean, I'm not, obviously. So I can roll with plenty of people, even not black belts. I can roll with plenty lower belts who could smash me. And sometimes if I'm rolling with someone who I know is probably going to beat me, sometimes I'm already defeated beforehand.
And you haven't even rolled.
Yeah.
Like,
and I think that's more of a going down into sports psychology than it
100%.
is like just generic etiquette advice in the gym. But I think for my students, they should know that I'm never gonna do a prick move and injure you. That's not my vibe at all. And anyone who's trained with me, you know, could vouch for that. So if you're a lower belt, like, man, come at me. I'm not going to hurt you, right? Like, we can just have a good roll.
Well, he might hurt you, but he won't permanently injure you. I think that's...
well, yeah, we established that.
Yeah.
Oh, look, I may make things incredibly uncomfortable for you, but
yes, you will.
Get on board, bro.
Yeah.
Jiu Jitsu.
Embrace the suck. So, yeah, I think just as a sort of to consolidate that piece, one anecdote that really comes to mind whenever I think about myself giving up to higher belts. There was this one roll I had with Joey, and forgive me if I've told this story before, but he didn't even have a submission on. He was working on a submission. It was some sort of arm or shoulder lock, and he didn't even have it on yet, and I tapped to it. And then after it, he was so taken aback because obviously he knew he didn't put a submission on. And he was like, what the fuck was that? Like, why'd you tap? What got you? And I was like, oh, the submission. He's like, what fucking submission? Like, he was full. He was like, so like, not, he was mad. Like, he wasn't like mad. Like, he didn't like full have a go at me, but he did in his Joey way. And that like, that moment I realized that I'd really fucked up and I'd given up because in my mind, he was going to win. So I'd just given up. And from that point forward,
I will say though, on the flip side, you also go completely in the other direction. The amount of times I see you get submitted and then you're like clutching your elbow because you waited too long to tap on the armbar. Sometimes you want to see how deep you can dig, but you can't do that every class.
Yeah, so definitely not against the brown belt.
you definitely go the other way as well.
Yeah,
but. Yeah, but it's I don't even think it's a fine line. I think it's a pretty clear line when you do decide to dig that deep.
Yeah.
But yeah, it sucks. The upper belt doesn't want that either. Like,
yeah,
I kind of hate it unless I'm having a flow roll. I hate it if I get to an armbar on an opponent. They can be a lower belt. I get to an armbar and they're, you know, where their hands are connected, the arm isn't extended yet, but then they just give up and let me extend the arm. I'm like, man, I didn't even break the grip. What are you doing?
Yeah.
You know, I'm not saying you don't have to fight me until you're going to be clutching your elbow and injured, but man, like
it's almost like they just want to reset and go again.
Exactly, right? Yeah, exactly. It's like they got into a bad position.
Ah, fuck it. Yeah. Like I'm not going to be able to escape this anyway, so they don't even try.
Yeah.
And I mean,
you got to try, people.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I keep teaching Atlas, my son, anytime he falls over or whatever, I keep saying to him, try again. And so now he'll be like trying to learn to ride his scooter and he'll fall over and he'll go, oops, try again. And he gets back up and he tries again. Hey, you got to keep trying.
We can learn a lot from Atlas.
Yeah, bro. And he's only 2.
Exactly.
Yeah. There was something else I wanted to say while we were on it. Now I've just blanked. I'm so bad at podcasting.
You only reveal that at episode 16?
I think that's all I wanted to cover when it comes to choosing the correct partner to drill with. I did have something else, but it has...
But in summary, the only person or type of person that you actively avoid is people you know
go out of their way to injure you.
Like actually try to injure you to whatever, big dog you or something like that.
Yeah, and our gym doesn't have any, but...
I've never had to do that.
They exist all over the place. Those people suck, right? They suck to train with. So I would avoid those people. Otherwise, you know, if you're a higher belt, if you're drilling complicated techniques, you need to... I'm not going to... I said I look for purple belts and up, but I can drill with white belts as long as they...
You suffer through it.
Yeah. As long as they interact correctly with whatever technique I'm wanting to do, right? So have a good drilling partner, be a good drilling partner, right? I've drilled with people before who they're just like a wet noodle.
Yeah, they give you everything?
No, not even like that. But I mean, man, have some rigidity in your frame and stuff. I'm trying to, you know, that collar grip break I'm trying to do is irrelevant if you're not even gripping my collar in the first place. You know, okay, we don't need to bust your fingers up, but you know, you've got to interact with me. You know, it's not just, you can't just starfish it, bro.
Yeah.
No one likes a starfish.
Exactly. On and off the mats.
Yeah. On and off the mats. You are not allowed to starfish.
Adam will know.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you're rolling, set specific goals, right? I actually go as far to say, kind of tangenting off from training partners, but even training in general, I set specific goals. You don't walk into a weightlifting session and just go, yeah, those dumbbells look cool. I'll do a few, I'll do 3 bicep curls and now I'll move over here. No, like, you know, you would at least know the muscles you're working on. Yeah. Maybe you might go in with more of a casual approach, like you don't necessarily know what reps or weight you're doing, but you kind of know, all right, I'm doing legs, or you have some type of structure. And I suggest that for jiu-jitsu as well. You won't know what the structure is in terms of what technique you're drilling or whatever, because that's up to the instructor. But you should have your goals for rolling, what you're working on, and then you overlap that knowledge with the particular partner that you're rolling with.
Yeah, totally agree. Awesome.
What are you working on at the moment, Kieren?
You know what I'm working on.
He's working on over-unders. He's working on stack passes. He's heavy chest passing.
And a bit of stand-up.
And a bit of stand-up.
Just throwing down some takedowns.
What am I working on, bro? Diablo 3's going pretty well.
World of Warcraft, level up that warlock.
That's rough. I was recently on the Jungle Brothers podcast, and we were talking about
video games.
We did talk a bit about video games, but talked about having your love taken away from you, which is jiu-jitsu at the moment.
Quick shout out to that episode. Do you know what episode number it was? I don't have it off the top of my head.
I do remember, because it was episode 123.
Well, there you go.
Episode 123.
If you want to listen to Adam on the Jungle Brothers podcast.
Along with, I was on there with JT.
With JT, who we will have on the show, as well as Joey, the host of the Jungle Brothers podcast. Check out episode 123. If you want to hear Adam, JT, and Joey, the trifecta, have good banter. It was actually a very good episode. So shout out to Jungle Brothers podcast.
It was fun.
If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, please feel free to support us on your streaming platform of choice. Follow us on Spotify. If you're watching the YouTube version of this on video, if you didn't know there was a YouTube version, there's a YouTube version. Check that out as well, and feel free to subscribe. Also, if you want to support the show and go that little bit extra mile, we are now on Patreon. If you're not aware, Patreon is a way that you can support your favorite video content or just content creators in general. You can shout us a coffee, shout me a haircut. As the running joke is.
You mentioned that last episode. Yeah. Kieren needs a haircut.
Still need a haircut. Yeah, get me a haircut. But if you want to support the show and enable us to continue doing the episodes and do what we do, please feel free to show love on the Patreon.
And also, guys, this is episode 16. We've got coming up episode 20 will be another of our Ask a Black Belt episodes, a Q&A. So please feel free to send in any questions you have. The easiest way would be on our Instagram. You can just send us a direct message on our Instagram. The questions can be jiu-jitsu related or not,
open.
They don't necessarily, they could just be, by the time, if you've listened to all the episodes, you've listened to a bit about my time in Brazil, Kieren's time in the Navy, and videography, bodybuilding. So the question might just be about us as individuals or jiu-jitsu related. I've got one question here that's been submitted where someone asked me.
Oh, is this a spoiler?
A spoiler, yeah, you could say so. Well, I'm not going to answer the question, but someone asked me if I have any superstitions when I compete.
That's a good question.
Do I, have a lucky something or whatever? So the questions don't have to just be, what do you do when someone does this? And
but
whatever.
They can be.
They can be as well.
They can be technique based.
Any questions, guys. You can ask me if I've started drinking coffee with a straw.
Which you should.
Well, you just did. Good one, Kieren. But yeah, guys, thanks for listening. Episode 16, done and dusted. And we will be back shortly with number 17.
Gotcha.